Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martens and I have the great pleasure of hosting Steve Falconer again for a stream. I think this is your second time on the King Heroes Journey.
Oh, yeah. Well, three, because I had you on mine afterwards. So this is our third. But yeah, my
Third
second on
conversation.
yours. And thanks for having me. It's great to catch up.
Yeah, my great pleasure. This is, as I was mentioning, a topic I wanted to cover for a while already. And then I knew I wanted to have you on. I'm like, you're the guy.
Well, I've been around since there was no truth movement. So yeah, it's going to be interesting talk.
Definitely. I'll just say hello to Demented Doris. I like your name. That's really cool. Blasu Platus is here. Fantastic. Nice to see you. Come and say hi in the chat, everybody. This is a platform where I stream what I call King Heroes, an archetype that I kind of invented, but feel like more I found it and discovered it. And it really is about those who are willing to get out and speak the truth unabashedly with no fear of any kind of retribution or backlash that's going to take place. And we know there's backlash. We are here on several platforms, including Facebook and YouTube. So just so you know, we have to talk in code. Yeah. Also live on X and Rumble, Rockfin, and Vigilante TV. So welcome, Steve. I'm going to let you know if you're not familiar. He is the host of the Spacebusters channel, which took off wildly in the 2020 season. And you can find his channel if you are not already subscribed there. I've been catching up on some of your most recent stuff that you've posted, and people have had you on for some really interesting discussions on, I caught your one on history yesterday, and my ears really perked up around the Bolshevik Revolution because I think you have some understanding there. So maybe we'll get into that as well. Our main focus is going to be this, and I have to use quotations, truth and freedom movement. It's become like the label itself, I know, is problematic, but how else do you describe us and not them, for example? And even how us and them maybe is weaponized against us. I want to talk about what in this movement has been organic, in your opinion, and what has been engineered, because I'm very well aware at this stage of the game that they expected us. They knew we were coming, not just in this most recent period that we've been in. That's been, I've heard you talk about that too, maybe even ruined their plans to some degree. So we'll get into that. And so if you're not familiar with Steve, he is the host, as I mentioned, of Spacebusters podcast. He's a former Chicago native living in Copenhagen, Denmark. We met at Anarchapulco last year. I took a shine to you, Steve, because you're just a genuinely nice person who's very open and not checking people's credentials or stats before you decide whether they're worth talking to. He's also a music teacher and a full-time touring musician. He's a father and a researcher into all things hidden, esoteric, and out of the ordinary. Daily experience with a gift for debunking or demystifying occulted information.
Yeah, thanks, Beth, for having me on again. I think your insights are just on the money because I think they were expecting us because they created us, because they play divide and conquer. I think they knew there were Aquarian energies coming in where a certain amount of people were going to start awakening anyway. In fact, everybody. So, of course, what you do is you divide and conquer, you corral. What is the truth movement? You know, for instance, like, I'm glad you had me on because I had my awakening in 2004, 5, a little earlier, but like that's when I really went down the rabbit holes. There wasn't really a truth movement back then. There was like David Icke, Dr. John Coleman, you know, G. Edward Griffin. There were the usual seven suspects. Alan Watt, not Watts. So there, Bill Cooper. So there were only like these certain people you could find, and Bill Donahue, and even their views were very, I would call it uninformed for what we know now, right? So back then they had their own opinions, very driven by their religions, quite a lot of them or whatever. Things have changed now. I actually kind of watched the truth movement grow I didn't even think there would be. And then you have to say, like, can you have a truth movement? Because it's the same with democracy. You're trying to pigeonhole all truthers around the world into this category together. Let's say there's 2 billion truthers. Do we all have the same truth?
Not even close.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, and so the way I see it, and then you see what they do always, they put the agents in there and divide and conquer. What I do think has happened is the internet was definitely put there to spy and control. And the people who did wake up have re-weaponized the internet against the people who put it out against us. So we did do that, which is great. But yeah, like we'll talk about tonight, is this by design? Is this more divide and control to make truthers against muggles, or, you know, to make you think you're holier than, you know, you and I have talked about this before. Are we just weaponized against each other? Is there a truth movement? Or are they trying to take all the millions of people passionate about the different things and pigeonhole us all together like they do? And then they have their agents come out. You know, some of them work, you know, at Anarchapulco like we do. Like, Alex Jones, let's just take him because we're not affiliated. He says 90% of what we say, right?
Right.
And then he's out there going, the fucking lizard people and the frogs are gay. And, you know, he says all this crazy shit, which makes people who are just waking up or not awake, because he says 90% of what we say, but then he says this crazy shit, 10%. Doesn't that make us sound crazy?
Yes, that's a very good point, Steve. That, as you know, I did the Archetypes of Controlled Op last year, did a deep dive into studying these characters in the shows. We're kind of characters in the shows too, but, interesting about Alex Jones, I just happened to catch a little bit of him on X, and they're deplatforming him. They're like, they're coming any minute, and he's starting the new thing. And of course, he needs everybody's money. Right. So you got several archetypes, boom, 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 right, landed in there. And it's been fascinating. I've to your point about the divide and conquer, one of the messages that has come through the truth movement, especially since 2020, has been about unifying the truth movement, that we all need to get together and, supposedly agree on all of the unagreeable things. I know that personally, I fell for it and really gravitated towards, I'll say, my people. I think I'm still feeling like that, because if I'm sitting there, say, working with or just relating to somebody who doesn't get some of these basic principles, then it's hard to go anywhere from there. It's hard to create a real bond because you can't be yourself. So yeah, that unity message, it's trying, prescribing the impossible. There's no way to unify people. So yeah, just emphasizing your point.
I totally agree with you, because you can't agree with 2 billion people who have totally different goals. What is the goal of the truth movement? We can all sit around talking the truth, right? But what are we doing? And the more they divide it and the more truths there are, it's like, okay, well, what are we doing about all this? We can all sit around and talk truth all day long. But are we doing things? Are we making things? Or are we just all, in the Brave New World, I've talked about this before. In the 1984 model book, the government, they censored everything. They just threw it all out. And that is happening. But when you look at Huxley's Brave New World, they just threw so much shit at you that there was too much information overload. So you couldn't really care about one particular thing, because you were being bombarded every day with 1,000 things you should care about, and you should. But then where do you put your attention and energy? And I see that kind of happening in the truth movement. I see it manufactured. Also, like, what they do is they're agents of change, the powers that aren't and shouldn't be and won't be. They make all their money on, you need the new sneakers, the new clothes, you're out of date, right? Everything they're doing is they're putting in new systems, because change is what they can control. So you have to ask, is the truth movement, are we their dupes of change? because who's out there trying to change us? So I'm with you. I kind of smell a rat behind the whole thing. Is that where you're coming from, kind of?
Yeah, at least some substantial portion of it. It's hard to put any kind of a fraction on that, but yeah, I mean, it is such a trap that people get into, that, like you say, information overload, and they spend all of their time. I think all of us maybe did that at the beginning, right? When you first pulled back the curtain, you went like, "Oh my God, it's not what I thought." Actually, Alan Watt was one of my first things, guys that I tuned into, and he's so dark. I would honestly feel, somewhat suicidal every time I listened to the guy. I finally got myself off and onto Freeman, who had a much more positive tone and was thinking along some solutions lines. But yeah, that's to me a sideways track of the lover archetype that I write about. That the awakened lover is seeking truth, whereas the sleeping truther is seeking lies. And that's all they
Yeah,
end up doing, and not building anything of value.
that's correct. Yeah, and the what I actually also am like you. Alan Watt, for me personally, was one of the guys I still like because he cut through all the bullshit. He was saying exactly what I was saying. I'm not going to say the guy's name because he spoke virtually. Like, there are some of these people who are telling a lot of truths, and then they're telling you lizard people and multidimensional things are ruling the world. And it's a very convenient scapegoat. You're like, oh, okay, so they don't have names and addresses. They're extra dimensional lizard people running us from a moon matrix base from Saturn to the moon, so you can't do anything about it because they don't have names and addresses. And it's like, it's a very convenient scapegoat. And Alan Watt was onto all this. He's like, he never claimed to have the solution. He was just saying, dude, this is what's going on. This is how they're conning you. And for me, I really liked him. Yeah, he was dark. And if you only concentrate on that, but to me, he woke me up saying, dude, don't fall for these rabbit holes. He was very good. And there were, as you know, when I woke up, there were all these rabbit holes that you could go down, and you can just keep going down and down. They just never end. And you're like, are these put there on purpose so that you're just spending all your time going down them? And as you say, never do anything. You could sit and research conspiracy for 50 years and never get to the bottom of it, never get behind it. And while you're researching conspiracy, you will never do anything to liberate yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's the question, is this by design?
Exactly.
Is there a truth movement? Is there an organic truth movement at all? Or is this whole thing orchestrated by agents of change to create change that they can control the change?
Exactly. And as we know, one of the biggest weapons in war is propaganda, and especially now in our information age. And yeah, at least, Doris, the distractions at least, but I do have a sense that it's more nefarious than that. I keep forgetting his name, but he was on my podcast. I'll probably remember in a second. But that he says we're in 5th generation war. Some people are going like, oh, maybe World War III is going to start. It's like, no, we never did stop the war. It's just transformed and become much more intellectual. And like you say, you can spend the entire lifetime never actually getting to the bottom of any rabbit hole and coming out. Like for me, it became this just big question mark on my head. The more I so-called learned, the less I knew. And that's like good and normal too. But this is more like contortions and twisting. And, we criticize the normies for all of their cognitive dissonance, that they can't look and see the trails in the sky and make a decision like that. That's not normal or anything like that. But we end up in exactly the same state of mind that ultimately debilitates people.
Yeah. And we're also that we call our fellow beings normies. We are divided. We're saying you're normies. I'm a normie too when I'm in the supermarket. Like I'm not walking around the supermarket, giving speeches. I'm buying milk too. I'm a normie. So there's that divide. But yeah, and then we forget, to me, like, you get a holier than thou when you do figure out at least what you think's going on, and you do, then there are truths that we know, and then they don't see it. You forget that you were them 10 years ago, or, I was one too. And I am one sometimes in other categories. So to me, again, it looks like divide and conquer. And then I see it, as you're saying, when you lump the truth movement into a truth movement, you start to see the infighting. I've seen the flat earth. They're all infighting. The germ people are now infighting with the health freedom movement, right? Like, we're like, aren't we on the same side or not? And they're like, yeah, that's why we're going to fucking make you fight each other. It's like almost we forget who we're supposed to be uniting against, and we're fighting, we start infighting because it's really easy to manipulate people.
Exactly.
And what they just want you to concentrate on what you disagree on. There was a great guy, he's an Indian chief. I can't remember his name, Chief Iron, whatever. But Jason Bashir's had this Indian chief on, and he's like a young chief. He speaks in like Ebonics. Like he's just like, he's not like what you think, like how, he's a normal speaking person. And he said, chains. This was genius. He said, when you look at a chain, and I'm not doing 666 anymore, you're taking this out of context. The chains only touch at the two parts, but the rest of each link is untouched to anything. Most of the chain is not touching anything else but itself. He said there's only one little part at each link. And he said that's where we need to start coming together, is where we agree and stop worrying about the rest of the chain or where we disagree. Otherwise, yeah, you can either change the system or spend your time fighting each other over how we should change the system. And either way, none of us are changing the system, which is genius.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. I love that in principle, that you're looking for the points of agreement. And that's a beautiful thing in interpersonal relationships. If you are already related to somebody, maybe it's your family or, a good friend, looking for those points of contact rather than points of division works really well. But I also have found myself, and now maybe I just fell for it all, that I found myself pretty loyal to certain, like bring the law, for example. I've been in that rabbit hole pretty deep, and it was one of the subjects that the more I learned, the less I knew. But I did come to some conclusions about what was totally manufactured and meant to take people sideways. And we've seen people go to jail and have very bad responses from the courts and all of that kind of thing. So I still feel somewhere obligated. One of my law groups, I've got somebody going off. God bless them. I think I love them, just as a person. They're here in Manitoba, but they're spreading this, dare I say, I don't know, like crap. Let's just call it crap and not use any of the buzzwords. And then so what would you do in that case?
Well, the law one's an interesting one because, again, it's trial and error. So before, people were saying, I'm a sovereign or I'm this and that. They knew there was something wrong in a loophole, but they didn't understand, that by giving yourself the labels, you're still in their law of system and dictionary, So I've seen that mutating where more people are having success now, saying I'm a living man, a woman. I'm not a sovereign. I'm not giving myself a title. And again, people had successes with that, and now they're making it harder. They won't take you to court because they cannot put a legal precedence on where you win, or that's the end of them. So even in all the movements, we are having a learning curve, which is great. So there are failures and successes. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people, like you said, in the early days went to jail because they were the trial, they were the trial and error people, and they lost. But that is one way where we are liberating. We are starting to figure that out. So we are making progress, I do think, in certain areas. And law is definitely, in my opinion, one of the ways to do this. Like, especially as an American, you are the creditor to the U.S. government. You are not the debtor. But if you don't change your status and know what you're doing when you go into those courts, you are going to go to jail. If you have to do it right, you have to spend 5-6 years studying this and know exactly what to do. You don't just go in there. Oh, I saw a guy on the internet get a judge to bow down and walk away, and next thing you know, you're in jail.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, how
Yeah.
come it worked for them? And you're like, because they know what they were doing, and you don't. You really have to study. So maybe that's not the solution for everyone.
Right. On that point, I feel obligated to just say something in terms of status change. The document that we ended up being a person under, we didn't create, and therefore we do not control it. So to me, that's total fiction status change, and people are doing it. Their proof is that nobody's trying to stop them or calling them out or responding to any of their letters. Therefore, they are. This is one of the biggest, fattest lies in the law world, that when they don't respond to you, that what you've said is truth. It's a lie. It's a lie. It just means they're behind. They haven't caught up yet, and they don't have necessarily something to pin on you, but the illusion that because they didn't respond, that that's some kind of agreement, that is absolutely BS. And it does work the other way around. If they send you stuff and you don't respond, it is that you're agreeing. But we are indentured slaves in a system. And to me, that's not something, what you can do is to create entities that you do control. That's how you can navigate this system much more gracefully. But thinking that you're going to have any influence over your own birth certificate, to me, is totally bunk.
Yeah. And again, I think it's where you're at, your circumstance, and who you're dealing with. The system, you are right, is rigged against you. But in reality, yes, you do have power over it. So I've seen people winning. I've seen people losing. What I do see is no matter who's playing that game, their whole life is now a giant pile of paperwork, trouble, court this, call. It's like, you have to decide, do I want all this energy spent on, like you're saying, you're actually still playing their game, even though you're in control of it. But is that how you want to spend your life? Wake up and I have to go to court today and I have to write 20 rebuttals and go get him notarized. It's like what kind of personality are you, and is that what you want? Some people thrive on it. Some people really get off on it.
Right. I did a lot of studying about the kind of person, because I'm not that kind of person. I was willing to facilitate and host groups and speakers and do interviews and that kind of thing. But the more I learned about, in particular court procedure, the more I realized, like, God bless Dr. Graves, who did the How to Win in Court course. But he would say, oh, anybody can take this and learn it in a weekend. It's absolutely not true. No. Absolutely not true. Like, that's good marketing. Apparently the course is still good, according to some of my sources, that it's still useful. But yeah, like, and then you watch how those snakes operate in that environment, and all they're looking for is loopholes. All they're looking for is a way to railroad you or make an example of you and make sure that you don't get through that system. So yeah, to me, that's to be avoided. That's I share that with Cal Washington in particular, although some of the others I don't.
Yeah, Alex Eck was just talking about that with one of his guests too. People were getting away with it for a while, but now too many people are onto it. So now they're just making it harder and harder. They'll force you 10 times. If you do end up going to court after all these battles, they will bail out because they cannot let the precedent happen. They can't let it happen. But it's not just the old days where you flip over your utility bill, sign it this way and say this and send it back. That did work for a while, but now they're like, no, too many of you know about it. Because they won't let us crash their system. They will not let it happen. And we all know they're crooked. The judges are not on your side. If you get a lawyer, that's already you've defeated. So for some people, though, that is the way they are going and want to go. And some will have success, and some will be like you're saying, they'll sit in jail for 4 years and go, screw this. I'm not doing that anymore. I think, like, better than that to me, that's still playing their game. So I think it's better if we all still try to put our attention and energy into building communities and things together. Together we'll be stronger. But even in the law thing, there's people who are like, I'm just in this for me. I want the money. I'm a billionaire because I'm the creditor and I'll sign off everything. And it's like, well, unless you want everyone to be, do we want out of this or not? Right? To me,
Right.
that's the law. Is like, do you want? I can sneak my way around in the system and hush hush but don't we want to all be liberated or not? I think that's really where we're at.
Yeah, that's a great point, because if you're just doing this in a selfish way that you want to have, all of that mystical, magical trust money that I don't believe in actually, um, and one of the biggest psyops there was pitting the public against the private and vice versa, and giving us the message that we need to divorce the public and be in the private only. And then when you look at that, say one of my friends who did the whole ticket magic thing and wrote all the right words in the right colors and everything like that. And then, so that seemed good for about 6 months until he went to try to renew his license and registration. And it was a total block. Like, no, until you pay that ticket that still exists, despite what you wrote on it, you're not going to, so if he wants to have that privilege to drive, which, that's considered, that's a whole thing unto itself, that he need, so we all need to participate in the public in some way. And I think that's fine. That's fine. And if our goal is to be in the private work, it's like cutting yourself in half. To me, those are two archetypes, the public and the private. You can't destroy one. All that means is that you're going to end up having, the private start to take public function, which we think is going to be good, but it's just going to turn into public too. So it's really a question of like what, growing up, taking responsibility where we can, knowing what you're entering into when you take a public designation of some kind in order to do something and move freely. We want to travel. You and I are going to get on planes to go to an Acapulco coming up February 17 to 21. We have to cooperate with the public to a degree. Now the last time I traveled, I'm proud to say I didn't get a single facial recognition scan. I didn't go through any of their body scanners. They threatened me that they're going to take me off to another room and it was going to take a really long time. And I'm like, okay, I got time. You made me show up here 3 hours early. I got time. And it turned into just a big fat nothing, a little chat. Who are you going to see? How do you know them? Supposedly verifying me. The other woman who verified me, she took my passport, she looked at it, and then she looked at me, and she looked at it, and she looked at me, and she looked at it, and she looked at me. She said, okay, you can go. Like this, it's just a bunch of crap. But if we try to cut ourselves off at that public level, then very few people could live that life.
Well, that is it. Yeah, because a lot of people are saying it's, you should just jump from private to public whenever you want and back and forth. But as you're saying, that's great in theory, but it doesn't work that way. If you're going to go private, like you're saying, you don't get the licenses and all that. You have to to me, it looks like right now, you either have to go private and that's it or not. Now, I'm not versed enough in it well enough to know. And again, I think it's a learning process. So I bet if we had this conversation in 4 years, there might be, some headway made that we aren't aware of yet, where through trial and error, everybody got screwed. But again, like you say, it's also a matter of convenience. The whole rest of the world is in the public life. So if you want to go private, like you're saying, you're kind of isolating yourself from it. And then, you don't just get to go bopping and hopping about in the public, which is where we all still live. That's what I'm saying. I think we need to work on building something different where we're not worried about public and private anymore, where we have a new public, a new public, a new republic or republics. But again, if you got 2 billion or 3 billion truthers who don't agree, no 3 billion people agree on anything. Your family can't even agree on what you want for dinner. You know what I mean? So it's a pretty daunting task, man. So yeah, and I see this in all the truther stuff. Now it's what do we is it the flat earth or is it law or is it the health or we can all do what we want to do toward this and that, but I don't see one unifying thing, if that makes sense. And it should be the truth. should be the unifying thing. But as you know, then we got realism against solipsism. Everyone has their own truth. So we can't even agree on what is truth. So I don't know. It's a pretty hard task, at hand.
Yeah, exactly. If I could jump in and ask you, no, I haven't done anything around the election whatsoever. Even my King Hero channel, the day before the election, someone posted some pro this or that. And I just noted, like, wow, this is the first time on this thread that the election has even come up, which I was, I had pride about, and that's a sin of pride. And but if Trump has certainly appeared to be more of a truther in some ways, this with this last leg. But if you go back in the history, you can see that he was all like pro-injection, father of injections in the COVIDian era. And what's been your take on this whole thing?
Well, yeah, and then, so I've been following the gematria of it all. So the Jesuits behind all of this, and the Roman Catholics and black nobility, everything they do is ritual gematria by the numbers. And there's a guy, Zachary K. Hubbard, Gematria Effect News 25 on YouTube. He's on his 25th channel. They wiped out 24. Everything they do is scripted. Kennedy Alan Watt, getting back to him, he used to say, they can promise you the moon, but there's no law once they get in where if they back out on their promise, you can hold them accountable. They can lie to you all they want. As soon as they're in and don't do anything they said, you've got to wait 4 years to get them out. So that's what they do. Oh, him and Kennedy got together and now they're going to take out the vaccines. You're like, no, they're not. Now Trump's distancing himself from Kennedy, as the numbers said. Kennedy doesn't care. I posted a picture. Kennedy was on his niece's X, Twitter, saying there's a picture of his niece getting an injection. And Kennedy's saying, this is my niece. She's a nurse on the front line of COVID, and I'm proud of you for taking the injection. You're like, okay. See, him and Del Bigtree, they're making money bitching about vaccine safety.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. They're pro. We should speak in code if you don't mind, just to preserve the possibility.
Sorry, yeah, we're on YouTube. All right.
Yeah. Just so you know. But you're absolutely right. When you go to Kennedy's Children's Health Defense and you look at the mission statement at the bottom of the thing, it says to protect children during pandemics. What the fuck is that? Excuse my bad language, right? Like, I just saw that and it was just, woo, okay, well, this guy is not on our side. Yeah, you're nailing it.
Let's take Del Bigtree, and then I'll talk code, right?
Sure.
He's getting paid for that high wire. He makes, that's his job. Like, he pays his rent off high wire. Now, what high wire does is they bitch and bitch and bitch about this thing, efficacy and safety and this, that. They don't say, well, there are no boogeymen flying around, as we've all proven now. There's nothing to take this against. And that's why he won't let any more. He let Andy and Tom on once, and never forth shall we ever get a voice again. Because if you knew there was nothing to do this against, then you can't make money off of that. It's like the American Cancer Society. And I think I have to talk code in this too. I know of a half a dozen cures for the C word. Clearly, the American Cancer Society has figured out about selenium and all the other things too. But see, their CEO makes $640,000 a year, and the whole society runs on it. So if you cure it, then they're all out of a job. They're not trying to cure it. They're trying to keep the gravy train going as long as they can. If we all knew that there are no boogeymen flying around, Del Bigtree's high wire is gone, because you can't sit and get paid to bitch about efficacy for something that's not needed. Same with Kennedy, right? And on. You can extrapolate this to everything. People are, even in the truth movement, people are making good money. Truthers are getting paid to truth, but they're not offering solutions. They're just telling you what's up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know
Back to that Exactly. So it becomes another arm of entertainment, right? Just like politics is the entertainment division of the military-industrial complex. This
Yeah.
has become, more of an entertainment, more of a way to absorb our attention and energy, to eat up our time, so we don't really have to do anything, because doing stuff is hard, Steve. It's
Yeah.
hard. You have to take risks. You have to work. You have to effort.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And they call this revelation of the method. So you can look at the Catholic priests. We know they have been abusing children. Like, we know, I don't even know if we can say this on YouTube, but kitty fiddling or, pedophilia. It's been running rampant in the Catholic Church. There were jokes when I was a kid. There were like Catholic joke books about priests, fiddling with children. But now we've all become numb to it. We didn't go out and like burn down all the churches and kick the priests out. Now it's just a joke that, oh yeah, priests do this to young boys, to choir boys. It's just, we just accept it. Like, we don't like it, but we don't do anything about it.
Exactly. There's
And
no
that's
retribution.
Yeah, they call that revelation of the method. They tell you what they're doing, but they make it so much that you won't do anything about it. You just go, oh, I guess that's just the way it is. Right?
I know.
They're doing it with everything. So that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, this truth movement, whether it's manufactured or some of it's organic, I do think a lot of it's grassroots, but they know that they have, Albert Pike said, when the people need a leader, we shall give them one. So they will always put a Pied Piper in your movement. They're in all of your movements. There is someone in there and it's usually the big names who most of us respect, And then, like I said, with Alex Jones, you can see them because they'll always say what you're saying, and then they'll just look like a crazy. They'll talk like a crazy. They'll look like a crazy. And then they'll say this 10% of shit that none of us are saying. And then everyone else who you might call a normie or who's not awake yet, who's maybe thinking about it. So, I heard Alex Jones say that, and he's fucking crazy, and he is. So if you're saying that in the 90% of things he's saying, it's guilt by association fallacy. Well, he's crazy, and he said that, and you said that, so you must be crazy.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, I called that archetype the clowns. That they did have some truth, but because they were jumping up and down on the desk, they completely discredited the truth, and made the rest of us look like idiots as a result.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the important point, Beth. Is the only reason we look like idiots. You say, well, look like idiots to whom? Well, we look like idiots to people who don't understand logical fallacy and logical thinking. Anyone who says, I know that's a guilt by association logical fallacy, Alex Jones can say truth and 10% lies, and this person could say the same, and it doesn't mean they're together. That's the problem we have, is that all of us are not educated in logic. We don't have it anymore. So we're saying, I look like a crazy, and you're like, to whom? Well, to the people you're calling normies, or people who don't have full cognitive function of their logical skills. Their left brain is damaged. That's what we're up against. So then the question is, what is the truth? This is what I notice. What is the goal of the truth movement? Or what do we bitch about the most? We want to wake everybody up.
Bingo. That's
right?
Exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
And what do we bitch about most? Everybody's asleep. We need to wake. We want to wake everyone up, and we bitch constantly about everyone's asleep. Well, now you got the problem. If everyone's logical function doesn't work because of their education and brainwashing, are we wasting our time trying to wake everyone up and bitching about how everyone's not waking up? Isn't that a waste of fucking time? Pardon my French.
No, that's okay. Yeah, you can swear, no problem. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I caught myself in that. It was a live and let live before 2020. But after that, okay, the gauntlet's off. Now I do have to go and be that weirdo in the grocery store that's asking everybody why they're in a mask and stuff. And, so what I found interesting about this election is that, if you don't mind going a little bit deeper into that, is that they selected, because I believe much more in selection than the alternatives, so-called, that they selected somebody who is more aligned with, because I got people jumping up and down all around me that I respect, that I've interviewed, that I consider to be smart and have lots of ability to logic their way through something, but they were cheering and we won, we did it, we've had this huge triumph now. So they selected someone that was more approachable to the so-called truth movement than the normal movement, if whatever that is. We have a hard time with terms here. And so is that a sign of some kind of tide, do you think, overall, maybe just in the US, obviously, but
No. No. What they're doing is, Trump is a polarizing person. Trump pisses off the left. He's polarizing. And the name of the game is divide and conquer. Now, the elites, they're not afraid of the left because they only revolt when George Soros, and when they tell the left to uprise, Black Lives Matter, they follow their masters and uprise, but they never bite the hand that feeds them. So they're not worried about the so-called left. They don't revolt against the system. They'll revolt against who the system tells them to. Who they're worried about is the far right, who will revolt against the system. So they get Trump in there, who's polarizing his shit, and he divides and conquers. And at the same time, now all the right, had Kamala Harris and Biden got selected again, the right would have been like, here we go. It's 8 years of the same old shit. It's time to rise up. Now, as you said, all these rights who are just getting ready to rise up are like, we win. Kennedy and Trump are going to get rid of all the this and that. And they tell you this story every time, every 4 years. Now all these anarchists and rights are now pacified. Right? Like right? They're like, they're celebrating like they just won the lotto. They're like, we win.
They're drunk. They're intoxicated.
Yeah. And the left are screaming and crying into pillows like they always do. They like to bitch and whine. They don't do anything. The right is who the establishment's afraid of, because they will do something. If 12 years of the Democratic Party were carried on, there would be a revolution. That's why they got to get them in and out every 4 years. They're like, wait, how much can we get away with? And then, see. So, and then you can get deeper into the gematria, and Trump's related to Charlemagne and Edward II. So all the U.S. presidents who get selected have to have the most blood relation. But that might even be a little too esoteric for people who don't know how controlled it is. But so you can see why you would put Trump in. Now, interesting, keep an eye out at Thanksgiving. 26th or 28th, you might see Biden step down and make Kamala Harris the first female president. Now, this has a very deep-rooted ritual gematria, meaning why they would do this. And this would be to make Trump become 48 instead of 47, because everything they do is in ritual. But we might actually see a female president for 1 month before Trump steps down. I'm not saying you will, but put it in your calendar, either the 26th or 28th, right before Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving. We could see Biden die or step down and pass the torch. And this would also fuel the Democrats' hope, because they're like, oh, at least as a consolation, we got our woman president. And that means next time, because Trump only has one more term, right? He's already on number 2. So that means we might get her in the next time. So it could be another hopium strategy, because Biden was like, the good thing about the last 4 years, whether it's Trump or Biden, everyone could see, you're like, these two morons are the best shot you got to run the United States, which lets you know that the president doesn't run the United States. They don't.
Right. Yeah, all really well said. I like that a lot. I was musing about it, the machinations, the amount of money and investment that goes into an election year. And, they're pounding the pavement and working so hard, producing absolutely nothing, and motivating the people to do one thing, put an X in a box, if it's even that. And, so for all of that, fanfare, all of the money spent, there's like just this tiny little action that they can inspire people to imagine if that was going in some, like truly building capacity. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, and the funnier thing is, they've always got you looking at the president. They love sleight of hand, right? The real problem is the scumbags sitting in Congress for 40 years. In the Senate. You see what I mean? Those people, they've been sitting there years and years and years and decades. They're the ones who are actually making the laws and shit. All a president can really do in America is veto a law or declare war. And he still needs the backing of the Congress and the House. So we're all looking at the president every 4 years. You're like, what about these other dickheads who are really the ones sitting there doing all the shit? We're not looking at them. And even with them, they have to get reelected too. So like they get in and then they're like, all right, and there's a new election. There's a midterm in 2 years and then an election in 4. So like for 2 years, they're spending all their time campaigning and money, like trying to get in again. Like you say, they're doing nothing except out raising money. That's all they do is they're like professional money raisers to go out and get back into power again. And then you wonder how these lobbies have control of them. You're like, yeah, isn't that funny that these lobbies can come in and offer you money for your campaign and suddenly you're on their side? Like, yeah, because that's all they do is beg for money to get back in.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying, is there a permanent organization running the government? Forget the name of them, but something like Circo or something. Do you know anything about that, Steve?
Yeah, the U.S. government is run by the Jesuits and out of their Switzerland branch. Absolutely. It's the Roman Catholic Church behind all this. And they started Israel. The Jesuits started Israel. They put a lot of Jews in charge to make it look like that, as Jordan Maxwell said for years. Jordan Maxwell said, I spent 50 years looking into this. They put the Jews there to make it look like they're the ones to blame because the church would never get involved in any of this.
Bottom line on the world today and the stuff that's going on the earth today, what we call Illuminati was originally a term which is given to us in Spain to a religious order in Spain that later on were amalgamated into what we call Jesuits. So the Jesuits are truly Illuminati themselves. I believe that one of the most evil organizations that exist on the earth today, and you'd have to have spent all the years with me in libraries and research societies and traveling around the world and talking to other writers, authors, lecturers, and teachers, and collecting this stuff over a period of 45 to 48 years to understand what I'm telling you. But I believe today the most serious evil organization on the face of the earth is the Vatican. I think if the Vatican was done away with off the face of the earth, there would be a shout of liberation heard around the world. So when you talk about Illuminati, when you talk about the really dark criminal stuff that's going on the earth, you're talking the Vatican. You're talking the Knights of Malta, which gave us the 6 men who founded the CIA in America, were all Catholics, members of the Knights of Malta. When you begin to look at the banking fraternities in America, like the Bank of America, Union Bank in California, all of these people who founded these banks and today are running the banking establishment are all Knights of Malta, Catholic Masonry. So when I hear people talking about the Jews this, the Jews that, and the Jews are responsible, I said, no, you better go back and do your homework. The Jews have been slaughtered all over Europe by the Vatican. You need to remember that for at least 2,300 years, Rome has dominated Europe. Under the Caesars of Rome, and in the 4th century, late 4th century, the Vatican comes into being. And the Vatican dominates all of Europe, all the heads of state, all the princes and kings and rulers, all the kings and rulers in Europe rule by the divine right. Who represents divine to give the king the right? The Pope. The Pope appoints certain families to be over the French. The Pope appoints certain people to be over the Germans and over the British. And so by divine right. Why? Because the Pope represents God. And the Pope says that this family is holy and that they should rule. So if you want to talk about conspiracies and you want to talk about evil, don't talk about Jews. You better talk about the people who would control Europe for over 2,300 years, Caesar of Rome, the Roman Catholic establishment. There's the real story. Now you're getting into mafiosi. Now you're getting into the fraternal orders of Freemasonry out of Europe, Knights of Malta. Now you're getting into the organized crime, Sicily, Corsica, and all of the profound drug running, white slavery, murder for hire, Vatican. There's nothing holy in Israel. Nothing. There's nothing holy in the Vatican. There is nothing holy in Salt Lake City. There's nothing holy in religion, periods. They have set up certain institutions of learning, of education, religion, and government. That's why I've said you better go back and do your homework on where the history of the world comes from. I don't see the world being run by Jews. I see Jews being used, but you will find that even Rothschild, the Rothschild family who we hear so much about, those Jews who were running Europe. No, if you go back and look at the history of the Rothschilds, you will find that Rothschild represented the Vatican. He was dealing for the Vatican. He was a Vatican banker appointed by the Vatican to deal for them, so that the Catholic Church would never be involved in all that terrible stuff going on in banking. We'll let the Jew do it. Then, of course, if something comes out, well, it's Jewish, obviously. No, it's your money that he was handling. So if you really want to nail down the real enemy to America and to the earth, I don't know that much about it. I've just been looking at it for 48 years, is the Vatican. And that doesn't even bring up the subject of propaganda due. P2, the propaganda due, P2 Lodge, that was even mentioned in Godfather 3 twice. It's connected directly, P2 is connected directly through membership with Opus Dei and the Knights of Malta and the Jesuits. Jesuits, Opus Dei, Knights of Malta, Masonic Order, and P2 is pure, unadulterated, poured directly out of the trough, Nazism. Underworld organizations, drugs, human trafficking, pornography, violence, underworld organization, it's all P2. They are the ones who are promoting the right-wing death squads in Central and South America, Mexico, the drug cartels in Colombia, and it's all being orchestrated out of the Holy Father and Rome.
When, like we talked about with the Bolshevik Revolution, the 17 people put in charge at the end, there wasn't one Jew on there. There was one. So you're like, wait a minute. It's always a Greek Orthodox or Roman Catholic in charge. You're like, hang on a second. Balfour Declaration, right? He was Roman Catholic. The Kalergi plan, the Jew Kalergi is flooding Europe with all these blacks and immigrants so that the Jews can take over. And you're like, well, how come both his parents are Roman Catholic Knights Templar? He's not even Jewish. So, yeah, there is a hidden hand. And the other thing people need to understand, there's no deep state in state. The deep state is the part of the state that you can't see. It's not like the state's great. Everyone thinks like, oh, the government's really great, but there's this dark, there's this dark section in the state that's trying to move behind the shadows. You're like, no, the state is oppression. Government is oppressive. It's democracy, mob rules through violence. It's just that they can't come out on TV and tell you that. That's the state, the white state. The black state is the ones doing all the shit behind the scenes, right? So they can blame them. Again, it's like blaming the extra dimensional lizard people from another dimension. They don't have addresses. So if you blame the state, they have names and addresses, but the deep state, who are they? We don't know who they are. They're mysteriously hiding in the shadows. Oh, how convenient. So the deep state is another, again, bunch of people with names we don't know and addresses we can't find and can't hold accountable. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. So many boogeymen, right?
Yeah, the boogeyman. Like,
Yeah.
show me the boogeyman. Let's go get the boogeyman. Like, if the boogeyman's real, let's all team up and go get him. Let's get rid of him. Let's go kill him.
Exactly.
But you're like, show me the boogeyman. They're like, you can't, because he only comes out at night in the shadows and we don't know his name. You know, like, doesn't it just start sounding like it's a joke? It's a joke.
Right. Yvonne wants you to do a roundtable with Etienne de la Boetie.
I don't know who's Etienne.
Oh, you don't know Etienne?
No, thanks, Yvonne. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, he's been at an Acapulco. That's where I met him the first time. I think there's a falling out there in some ways. But yeah, same lady was saying that both Trump and Trudeau went to Jesuit schools. So that's good corroboration with what you're saying there.
Trump went to Jesuit schools. Trump's children all went to Jesuit schools. Biden is a Jesuit. He went to Jesuit school. Hillary Clinton went to a Jesuit sister school. Every U.S. president who's ever been elected and every person who's went up against them as the last two, the one who's got the most blood relation to Charlemagne and Edward II get put in every time. And we've all seen this before, that all the U.S. presidents are related to so-and-so and, you know, something like that. These are like, they're kind of like, you could call them modern pharaohs. You know what I'm saying? So here's the other problem we have, is that people think that presidents are puppets. Prime ministers, presidents, they are. In other words, they work for the mother organization. So they're puppets in a way, but they're not, because they're still in the family, like the mafia, right? So if the Gambinis are the head mafia family, they have their little wars with the other mob families over territories, but everybody has to pay, you know, whatever Don Gambini says, that goes. And they have wars. And that's what we're seeing with U.S. presidents, prime ministers. Trudeau is clearly Castro's son, clearly. And clearly both of them are the blood. Go look at a picture of Alessandro Farnese, Pope Paul III. It's Justin Trudeau. In the 1500s, you're like, that's Justin Trudeau. And Fidel Castro, it's these same families. So they have a fight between what they call the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. So the Guelphs are the white flag with the red cross. They sided with the Pope back in the day. They said, the Pope is the vicar of Christ and he says who's in control. The Ghibellines are the red flag with the white stripes. And they said, well, we side with the Roman emperor or the Holy Roman Emperor, who would be like Charlemagne. So they say, we think the kings and the royalty and the presidents and prime ministers should have like, they call it horizontal rule. So they say in the United States, the president should be like the ruling pharaoh, even though he's in the club. And then some states say, no, the Pope, vertical rule. The Pope, it comes down from the Vatican and black nobility only and give out the orders to everybody. So they have a little fight going on in their own club. And this has been happening since about 1300 AD. So that's kind of what we're seeing, is some of the presidents and the prime ministers, they are in charge, but they still can't go above the Gambinis, if you know what I'm saying. Like they're like, I get to micromanage our patch, but I don't get to manage the whole order. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've gone through several levels of this. Like, what are the kill words here? I don't know exactly, but when we get into like the Semitic and anti-Semitic movement, and some of our good friends are currently saying that it's all due to the Jays. I don't know. Like, is that a buzzword? Is that a kill word? I don't know.
I wouldn't say that on YouTube. Let's just we can call them the tiny hats or the Jays.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go with that. So I know you have a lot of background on that. It seems like there was a moment where you thought you could go to jail if you said anything anti-Jay, and then it seems like now it's being said at every turn. And so, like, what's going on with that? What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for starters, yeah. So we're under a J banking system, apparently, right? That's not true. If you look what happened, I found this in the Georgetown Law Dictionary, volume 72, page 1200. The Jays were slaves in England. They were not allowed to own property. They were a slave class. So the reason they had to get into banking is because they couldn't own property or chattel. They weren't allowed. What they could do, because England was under chivalry, is the Jays you could put a lot of the nobility, like the knights and the dukes, they were going out on the crusades and needed money first up front. Then they would go rob and spoil during the crusades, and then they would get it back. But see, they couldn't put their property up for collateral for the loan because the kings and the local dukes, knights needed knights around them to protect them in case there was an invasion or a war. But the Jays, they could take your property as collateral because they weren't under chivalric law. Wow. What no one knows is the kings knew they were having the Jays do this for them, and then the kings were taking all the money off the Jays and then giving the property back to the knights. So this lasted for 200 years, and the Knights Templars set up the first banking system anyway, because you've got loot from where you're robbing, but it's dangerous to bring it all back into Europe. So they set up what we call banks with checks. Like they're like, okay, you deposit your gold here and you can go pick it up in France. They had like a banking network. So our modern banking is not Jayish. It's a mix between Knights Templar and what the aristocrats of England, who are the Guelphs, so I'm talking about, who sided with the Pope, have set up. So yeah, we are under a Jayish banking system, but the Jays don't run it. You can go look at BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, all Roman Catholics set it up. And run Craig Hildebrand. Now there is Larry Fink. He is J for BlackRock, but it's managed by Craig Hildebrand, who's a Swiss Templar. He's Swiss. he's a blue-eyed, blonde-haired Swiss Templar. So that's what I'm saying. Like Jordan Maxwell said, they put a lot of J's in what looks like public positions of power, so it looks like them. But they're not running the show. They work for them. They work for the Vatican and the black nobility. You're not on a Jayish calendar. You are on the Roman Catholic Gregorian calendar. When you sign a contract in your name and date that thing, you're on their calendar. You're on their Jesuit spinning ball model. Your name and taxes do not go to any Jayish anything. They go into the Federal Reserve, which goes back into the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, that flies the red flag with the white cross, Ghibellines, Jesuits, Knights of Malta, Knights Templar. There's nothing going back to the Jays. They do let the Jays, the top Jays. Now, the Jays have several tiers too. So as you see in Israel, like the ones with the real curly beards and hats, jumping around the street, when they go out with their signs saying screw Zionism, they get beat by the IDF. Have you ever seen videos of the IDF beating the shit out of like Jews?
No.
There are two lower and middle class tier Jews who know Zionism is a Jesuit construction. They're totally against it. They're saying this is not Judaism, this is Zionism, which is a political affiliate. So even when you say the Jays, again, you're grouping all the Jews in the world into one. It's like the truthers, right? Well, no, there are layers of Jews too. Socially, they don't like each other either, even in their own layer. And I'm not saying they're not doing anything. We can see it. Now, this is getting back to what you were saying, right? So Israel, the Holy Land, is in your head. It's Isis Ra, it's the Temple of Solomon, soul of moon, sun and the moon are in your head. The Jays have been taught that the Dome of the Rock, in what they're calling Israel right now, is sitting on what used to be Solomon's temple. And they want to destroy the Dome of the Rock so that they can build a new Solomon's temple, which brings back their new Messiah, and then they get to control the world. The thing is, the Temple of Solomon is a metaphor. It's not a real thing. And the real Jerusalem is Edinburgh, Scotland, which I've been getting into this recently, but it's a whole another ball of wax. So these people are taking metaphors literally. And the reason the Jesuits put them in the Middle East through Lord Balfour is because the Jesuits do not like Jews and they do not like Arabs. They want them to destroy each other because they want that land. Because you say, well, what's so special about Palestine and Israel right now? The land. It's a desert. Like you can grow olives. That's it. Like, what do you want there? Well, all of the drug trade, human trafficking, organ trafficking, you have the Suez Canal there. So all ships under the new China One Belt, One Road initiative, run by Henry Breakspear, the black nobility family in Macau, China, has to go through that canal, or else your ships have to go all the way south around the coast of Africa. If you want to ship right from Asia or anywhere there to Europe or even to the Americas that way, if you're going that way, you have to go all the way around Africa unless you go through the canal. Well, who controls the canal? Well, Yemen, it controls the bottom part on one side, and Saudi Arabia touches the top part of it. Oh, isn't that funny? Saudi Arabia is British-controlled appointed royalty, and they're bombing Yemen. They want that canal. They want that land, but the Arabs are there. So the Jesuits want the Arabs and the Jews gone. They don't like either of them. So what do?
Pit them against each other.
Yeah, you stick the Jews in there and say, that's your Holy Land. There it is. That's the Temple of Solomon and the Holy Land. And then you let them genocide the shit out of Palestine. And then what do? Like you said this, Beth. It's on TV all of a sudden.
Yeah.
For like 50 years, whatever Israel did to Palestine, you never heard about it. Now it's on public TV, and there's like protests all around the world, and even the UN are saying, "Fuck these guys, it's time," right? So that's what I'm saying. My theory, and this is my theory, is that Trump, he's anti-war. I made peace with Kim Jong-un and now in Putin, right? I think he's going to pull out on Israel and say enough's enough, and then the Arabs are going to come in. And Israel's armed enough through the states. I think they want them to kill each other.
Wow, that's brilliant, Steve. I mean, that's not good news or anything, but that's really well put together.
But you're right. So sorry, because a lot of people in what you're talking about in Acapulco, they're all on it. It's the Jays. There's a lot of people in the truth movement who are convinced it's the Jays behind all of this.
Yeah.
And the Jays are, because you're into the psychology, right? If a father abuses a child, what happens when the child grows up usually?
Sadly, that child could be very aligned to the father. Protect.
Yeah, but also a lot of times that child becomes an abuser.
Also, yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So now think of it in this way. You've been abusing these Jews. They've thrown them out of every country. They were killing them and they were throwing them out. Then they have the Holocaust, which now we have to talk code again. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that didn't go down the way that story's not true.
Yeah.
Now the people in our movement say, well, on TV constantly you're getting all this Holocaust propaganda. You always I don't watch TV, but there's always some black and white movie about this. And they're saying it's the Jays are putting that Holocaust propaganda out so that they can play the Holocaust card. So we feel sorry for them. My take is way different. My take is that the Jesuits are putting out that Holocaust propaganda so the Jays feel victimized and entitled to go back and do what they're doing like an abused child does when their father. That's the way I see it. And not everyone agrees with me, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying I see it like this. And when you look at it like this, how do you get people to go out and genocide people like that? You say, well, there's your Holy Land. You're God's chosen people. And the Nazis did this to you. So it's okay for you to go do it to someone else.
There you go. Wow. Brilliant, Steve. I think you're nailing it personally. Yeah. Judgment agrees. Yeah. Crazy. And, Ken was asking how the 13 families they call elites fit in. I think I heard you talking about this on another podcast.
Yeah, so this is really deep. I'm making a movie about this. So there are 13 original bloodline families called the Black Nobility. They are not the ones that Fritz Springmeier and all them talk about. So you'll hear about the Kennedys, Lees, Onassis, Bundys, Collins. These are offspins of what are really Persian or Iranian Black nobility families who later moved into Venice, who are the Venetians too. This whole story about the Venetians is fake. They were the Irish Phoenicians, and I can't even get into this. So there were 13 what you could call later Italian Black nobility families, but really they came from Persia. Then they started intermarrying with the royal families of Europe, which is your kings and queens and this and that. So those are where you get what's called the Guelph bloodlines, the Windsors, right? So the like the Italian ones are the Orsinis, Aldobrandinis, Farneses, Colonna, Christopher Columbus, Colonna. You can go down that list. The ones that we call Rockefellers and Rothschilds are Orsinis. Rockefellers are Orsinis or Rothschilds who changed their name. Collins, the American, are Colonna. Bundys, Kennedys, Lee, Onassis, all the ones we call the 13 Illuminati bloodlines are American families who have changed their names, who are related to the Black nobility, who have intermarried with all the European royalty, who are now that's your Windsors and the Swedish and the Netherlands, Beatrice from the Netherlands and all these guys, right?
The Rothschilds come from the Orsini family. Roth means red in German, and the Orsini means red bear, little red bears. That's what Orsini means. The Grey Pope is Pepe Orsini. He trumps the black, he trumps the white Pope.
The Grey Pope is even higher than the black and the white Pope.
The Orsini is the Maxima family. They are the maximum family. They are on top, and somehow they've trumped the Colonna and the Farnese, which I know without any doubt through all my studies that they are the three most powerful Illuminati families.
What about Rothschild and Rockefeller?
Well, they are Orsini. They just changed their name. Rockefeller were Rothschilds. Rothschilds were Orsini. Orsini were a family which have their bloodlines in Babylon and Egypt. They tell you that. You read their biography.
The Orsini, the Maxima family. Maxima means they're on top. The Collins family, they went west, and the Orsinis went east. And they sent the Jesuits into Japan. The Japans were beheading them. Caught Jesuits anywhere on their land, they would just chop their heads off, honest. But finally the Jesuits conquered in Nagasaki. That was their stronghold. And then they started the Opium Wars against China. Then they invaded Australia, and that was the Orsini side going east. And the Farnese helped them as well, because the two families that started the Jesuits were the Farnese, Copernicus, the Globe-tard, the founder of the Jesuits, and the Borgia family. Those two families, Borgia and Farnese, with the Medicis, the Orsinis, and the Pallavicinis as well, co-signed, and they started I Fondi. In Italian, I Fondi means the funds. So they have the gold and the funds to back all of their black ops and Tavistock, MK Ultra, Majestic 12, all of the crime in the world, all of the financial disasters, all of the climate disasters, all of the famines. They run everything.
So this is where people get confused. They think it's these 13 or these 13 or these 20. It's not. It's just a massive nest of all of them who have been intermarrying with each other, and they fight over each other's territory like the mob. That is one of our saving graces. They're fighting inside, like the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. The Guelphs want the Pope to rule, and that's because in the 1500s, they started putting their family members in as the popes because they figured out, see, what you had is like Constantine and the Pope. So the Pope's the vicar of Christ, and then one's the Holy Roman Emperor. So, but it's the Pope who says, you're the Holy Roman Emperor. I dub you because I'm the voice of Christ until he comes back. So you're the Holy Roman Emperor. And then he says, well, as the Roman Emperor, I dub you the Vicar of Christ. And then they start fighting over, well, who gets to put in all the bishops and then who's in charge of the country, right? And the Pope's like, I'm in charge of the country because you're just the king of Spain, but I made you the king because you are wholly appointed. Well, appointed by who? The voice of Christ, the Vicar of Christ, the Pope. He's the reason you have the divine right to rule as a king, is because the Pope said you do. And then he's saying, well, no, I'm the Holy Roman Emperor, and I made you the vicar of Christ. So they have this fight, and they have been fighting for a lot since about 1200. Some want to be like, we control our country, and some want to say we'll take orders down from the top of the Pope, who is the black nobility. And they run out of Switzerland, they run out of the United States, they run out of the city of London. They have all their headquarters. They're out of Spain, out of France, where the Jesuits come, right? And they're even in Sweden, where the Knights of St. John. So that's where it's confusing, is they have a lot, and then they run the Committee of 300, which anyone who's read Dr. John Coleman. Well, the head of the Committee of 300 is the head of the Order of the Knights of the Garter, which used to be Elizabeth till she died. And she's a Guelph. She's the ones who work for the Pope. So they run the Committee of 300, who run the Council of Foreign Relations and the Royal Institute of International Affairs, right? And then you got all your Tavistock Institute and the Round Table and all. You're like, what are all these groups? They're all just working for the black nobility. That's how they divide up their empire, and the Jesuits too, as well. Yeah.
Right, but they and what you're saying, just to reflect that, is that they're actually competing with each other. That's one of the things that I noticed earlier on in my truther career, so to speak, is the presence of those competing factions. How they were actually, vying for the media attention, right? Like when the boogeyman virus was just all blown up, and then suddenly you've got this BLM kind of thing. I don't know if that's a kill word on YouTube or not, but. They're fighting with each other, which I think. Do you think that's to our advantage, that they're fighting with each other?
Yeah, because kind of. Like if anyone's listening, if anyone's ever seen Game of Thrones, I don't know if you saw any of that stuff.
Sadly, no.
There was this show called Game of Thrones that was really big. Anyone
I've heard of it.
Yeah. If you've ever watched Game of Thrones, that's what's going on. It's all these empires that have to work together. But then they're all conniving behind the scenes to take like the major power, right? So, yeah, in one way it's to our advantage because they end up taking each other out. However, when they do their fights, we do the fighting for them. You're not going to see any of them doing it. So whenever you see a war in the Middle East or whatever's going to happen in World War I, II, maybe III now, we lose because we're the ones who fight for them. So, yeah, I mean, in one way, it's to our advantage because they are fighting each other, but do we win? No, it's not to our advantage because we're the pawns.
Yeah, good point. And Yvonne is saying you got to wonder how.
Yes. Yeah. That's the other thing is like, so a lot of these black nobility families, they've been moving east to Southeast Asia, China, India. Because the Chinese One Belt, One Road initiative that we hear a lot about, that's their new thing. BRICS, right? You've got Brazil, Russia, Iran, and China have the new currency now. Well, that's them. Henry Breakspear runs China out of Macau, China. That's their new currency. So when the dollar collapses, which it will have to eventually, this is the new Jesuit Roman Catholic black nobility currency. That's what that alliance is all about. They want to put everything in pockets, and that's why they want that Middle East, because that One Belt, One Road initiative from China, where all the shipping, trading, flying, it's going to come through the Suez Canal. Now they're talking about building what they're going to call the Ben Gurion Canal through Gaza after they destroy it. Have you heard about that?
No.
They want to dig a second canal that comes out of the Suez Canal and then goes into the Mediterranean from out of there right through Gaza and the West Bank. But they got a problem. They got a bunch of Palestinians living there, Arabs they got to get rid of, right? So that's because this is going to be the new Silk Road.
Right. You might be interested in, I hosted Brennan Sterling for a couple of talks on BRICS, and he's a finance guy. So you might be curious to add that to your research.
Yeah, I would love. Yeah, send me a link. I would love to watch that. Yeah,
I will.
And hear what he's got to say about what I have to say. And now I'm the first to admit there's a lot of people in the truth community who don't dig what I'm saying and don't agree with what I'm saying. And
It's
I'm not
inevitable.
saying that what I'm saying is the truth. I'm saying from all my years of research and the way that I look at things as a big picture, my gift, shall we call it, is to see the big picture. And I see this clear as day.
Nice. Good for you. What do you think about this comment, Patty? Nice to have you here. They all have one thing in common. They're all occultists using hidden knowledge to control us. Pretty sure they use black magic and demonology to maintain their power and control. Like you said, the gematria as well. I imagine you'd agree with that?
Yeah, occult just means hidden. It doesn't mean evil or bad. Yes, they are all schooled in gematria, Kabbalah, all the occult practices. Now we just call the occult. In the old days, it was the mystery schools. Now we call it psychology, neuro-linguistic programming, EFT. It's just basically mind control, basically, and understanding how how humans work, react, resist, how fear-based mind control, all that. Yes, the reason there's nothing wrong with the occult. I'm an occultist too. I'm not using it. So you have black magic, white magic, and gray magic. Every time you speak, you're using magic. Every time you write, you're using magic. You're taking thought and turning. An architect is a magician. They think of a building. Oh, I can see this in my mind. They draw a blueprint. They hand it to a bunch of engineers and builders, and boom, that building's there 5 years later. That's magic. So a white magician knows that thought and speech and action are how you manifest mind into physical reality. White magicians do magic for the benefit of everybody. Gray magicians do magic for the benefit of themselves, but never to hurt anyone. Black magicians do the same magic. They're manifesting shit for their own gain, and fuck you, even if sometimes it's to hurt you. But they don't care if they do. We're all magicians. Everyone is an occultist and a magician. It's just that occult means hidden. So they don't tell the public this. People say, what are the Freemasons doing in those lodges? You're like, they're learning this. They're learning psychology, mind control, manifestation, how you turn mind into thought from the etheric and the mind level into matter. This is what they're learning. Magic, which is magnetism, the magi. People don't know this. Do you know what the name of the fifth and highest degree of Satanism is in the Satanic Church?
No.
Do you know what he's called? The MAGA, M-A-G-A. What's Trump running on? MAGA, Make America Great Again.
Right.
His campaign is named after the fifth and highest degree of the Church of Satan.
Fancy that. Wow. So how common do you think the black magicians are? Is that something that's overblown in our mind, in the truther mind, to make us more afraid, more suspicious, more, less productive, more distracted?
Like how many of them are there doing this, you mean?
Yeah. Like, is it all of them? Is it, in terms of controllers who ought not be? What do you think?
I will say that in the Freemasons, then you have several different branches. Most of the people in there don't know what's going on. It's only when you get to the higher degrees where you start to learn this stuff. So again, it's like what our problem is we pigeonhole everything. It's the Freemasons. You're like, no. It's some of the Freemasons.
Right.
Not all of them. It's some of them in each branch. It's not the Rosicrucians. It's not Opus Dei. It's not the Illuminati. There are some who know what's going on and some who don't. But yeah, they all study the occult. Like, I can't remember who was it, Yvonne? Whoever wrote that is correct. Occult means hidden, and the reason they won't teach us this in school is because you can't control people when they know how you're doing it. It's the same like if you were a psychiatrist, let's say you were like a 50-year practicing psychiatrist and your wife ran off with a high school boy. You don't think you could mind fuck that boy? You could probably get him to commit suicide within 2 weeks if you sicked your psychological powers on this boy and started calling him and saying, who do you think would win that one?
Yeah.
That's what, you know what I'm saying? That's what they're doing. They understand our psychology. That's what all the colors are, and the words and the constant stay at home, stay safe. They know what they're doing. It's no accident. They have yellow signs with red and black and three letter stay at home. Lee Harvey Oswald. They're using 3-5. They're using 3-5 word language, cadence language. They keep repeating the same shit to you till you believe it. They know what they're doing. Absolutely.
Exactly. And if they don't keep repeating it, we forget.
Yeah.
If we don't have that constant pattern telling us that we're in danger from this or that, then we don't remember. It becomes, yeah.
They know the law of threes as well. So they know they can tell you 3 lies and you'll take it as fact if you're not awake. So you'll see it in the newspaper in the morning, you'll hear it at the water cooler, and then you'll see it on the news at night. And you'll just, that must be it. That's for real. Yeah. Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Remember that one?
Yeah.
So then we all let our countries invade Iraq because we believed it. They kept saying they have them. And then all of a sudden, like 2 years later, it turned out they didn't. But we were all like, oh, well, we kind of just, we invaded them anyway. They don't care if we figure it out after they get what they want. You know what I mean? But you can see how it happens to us all the time, like constantly. Yeah. We just believe shit without looking into it ever. I know I still do it, and I'm awake.
Yep. Exactly. I know there's only so much time in the day to study every little thing. That's why we turn to people like you. I know, you follow up and say, okay, here's all the books that I got this from. Go read those and decide for yourself. So that message is embedded here.
But they don't. Because I'm a musician, so I have a lot of free time. Because I make all my money in a short amount of time. Not everyone has time to read 7 books on one topic. And I don't think a lot of people even read much anymore. It's what I think is great is we now have videos. You don't have to read a book. If you and I read 5 books and summed it up in 2 hours together, we could give the nuts and bolts. Like, to me, it's just as valuable. Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly. That's how we stand on the shoulders of giants. That's, I think, one of the things that makes us totally unique as human beings is that we can learn from each other.
Yeah.
Right? Not just information, but outcomes. Watching certain people go down certain tracks and seeing how that turned out for them. And then you can make a new decision if you're smart based on those kind of things. And thank you, Sane Lady. I was going to say also, that's why I'm personally very committed to becoming a master, to the degree that it happens in this lifetime, maybe totally, is a possibility, mastering the emotional, psychological, spiritual world that we are masters over. We just feel victim to, and helping other people do that, because our controllers know that stuff. They know exactly how to pull our strings and push our buttons. And we don't have a clue what's happening. Whether we're on this side or that side, it doesn't matter. We're still very vulnerable. So that's
what you do, Beth, is you're a white magician. So like the book you write and the podcast you do, you're taking your mind and knowledge, putting it into words, people read it. You're casting spelling in your books, right? But you're doing it because you want everyone to wake up. So you're doing what's called white magic. It's not for you. It's for everybody. That's your goal. So you're doing the same occult magic they are. The stuff you teach about the hero's journey and the archetypes, that's occult knowledge.
Exactly.
It's just that you've de-occulted it. You're spilling the beans. You're like, here's what they know. Here you go. And that's how you diffuse this, is you say, how do you take advantage of someone when they know how you're doing it? A manipulator, a narcissist can't manipulate you anymore. When you understand narcissism and the tools of a narcissist manipulation, then you just be like, nope, you're doing this, you're doing that. Nope, I see you doing this. You just wouldn't even fall for it anymore.
Exactly. We all need to be pattern hunters. So yeah, that's awesome. Would you like to dive in? This is a personal interest of mine, because my ancestors originally came from Germany. They were invited by Catherine the Great to Russia in order to grow food on land that her people couldn't grow on. And it was pre-Bolshevik Revolution that they were invaded, they were attacked, just like my ancestors personally, maimed and murdered. And then the rest of them, that's when they had to flee to Canada to save their lives.
Yeah.
And so I'm always looking at, of course, there's the history in the mainstream, which it's very difficult to digest. And what's your take on all of that kind of thing? My great grandfather was arrested for antagonizing the government in and around that time before they fled, by the way. So there was, some nasty stuff going on.
Do you know, like, really when do you have some dates or years or
The revolution, I think it was like the revolution itself was
So you're talking recent, right before. So they were there for right. They fled from the revolution then, right?
I think the revolution hadn't officially. What is the date again? The 1917, if I'm getting that correct.
Well, so here's the problem. So like the Jesuits, right? It's these Jesuits are bastards. The Roman Catholic Church. The Jesuits were like the new military order for the Roman Catholic Church. It used to be the Knights Templar, and I got into this if you go to Alpha Vedic with Mike Winter and Bear Lando, we did like it was like 5 hours total on all this, right? So the problem is the Jesuits got so nasty, even the Catholic Church kicked them out in like 1775. They were like, these people got to go. Like, they're fucking bad news, right? So they banned them. And then what we call the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, this was the Jesuits coming after both the church and the royal families who protected them. They came after all the Guelphs and the church. The Jesuits were like, fuck you, we're going to get you both. So the Pope, I think it was Leo or I can't remember his name. They had to reinstate them around 1815. They were like, fuck, like because then the church started to lose power. So they're like, let's get these guys back. So it's these guys who have been fomenting all of it. Yeah. And see, this is the hard part. Like what we're taught in history, we don't know. It's all lies. All of it's lies. I've seen that the Russian czars, the British czars, and the German czars were all cousins in the 1900s, and they look identical. When you look at the three of them, they look like it even almost looks like there are people who say it's the same guy playing three roles like an actor. I think they're all cousins. So it's really hard. You say, well, what really happened? And that's the trouble we're having is you're like, well, where are you going to find that? Because every history book you open is totally full of shit.
Exactly.
So we don't know. We'll never really know. We can just say what we think happened. But this, there are things saying that the czars were actually, because the Jesuits did, they came after the Knights of Malta. During the time I was talking about, and the Knights of Malta, the Russian czars allegedly took in the Knights of Malta and some of the Knights of St. John who went to Sweden. And apparently, allegedly, the story goes the Jesuits didn't like that. So they came after Catherine. They came after Russia for that. So, and then they fomented the Bolshevik Revolution, of course. Yeah. So that's the, let's call it the mainstream story. Like you get like, even in the alternative media, the story about the Rothschilds, and he was a backstreet moneylender, and he and his 12 poker buddies got together in Frankfurt and came up with a plan to destroy the world. You're like, really? 12 guys in a Frankfurt money lending office like took over the world? Give me a break. So the whole, and all these are the Khazarians. They all came from Khazar, the fake Jews. So there's like the fake history they give us. Then they're like, for the people who are too smart for that, they give you another fake alternative history that everyone just runs with. Like I said, they don't look at the Kalergi plan. I'm like, well, let's look at Kalergi then. Who is he, a Jew? Well, no. Turns out he's not. So, but all of the alternative history truthers are running with these stories. Do you know what I mean? But you're like, when you go look in the stories, you're like, they're not true either. So that's the hard part. I can't really, really tell anyone what really happened because I got the same bullshit you do.
Yeah, I know. No pressure. Steve. No pressure that. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you got Tartaria in there. Like, was there a whole reset in the 1800s or 1700s? Was there a worldwide civilization that was living peacefully with free energy? And is there even a third bullshit story on top of that being hidden,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thanks for not clearing that up. I'm just kidding.
Well, that's exactly it. Everyone's like, "Tell me what's going on." I'm like, "That's what I'm looking at. I'm the same as everyone else. I have more pieces than people do, but I still can't say for certain that those pieces happen like they said, because I have access to the same. Now I read alternative authors, and I make sure to vet them to make sure, because since the beginning of the Gutenberg press, the Catholic Church has had control of that press.
Mm-hmm.
So people are like, if you read books before 1930, that's what you need. I'm like, no. Those books have been controlled since 1490. Like, there's not a book out there that these dickheads haven't had their hands on.
Exactly.
Unless you find books of people who are naming these people. Those are the authors I read, are the ones who are actually blaming the Catholic Church, the Jesuits, the Guelphs, black nobility, who I know have been controlling the printing press. So I'm like, all right, if this person's against them, I'll listen to what they have to say. Does that mean that they're not full of shit too? No.
It's part of that division. Yeah, one of the things that happened that's interesting, and we share the same history, that it became illegal to preach the gospel. And they had to go into code, and they made songs like the 12 Days of Christmas to talk about all of those elements that had become, basically illegal. And I have heard your take on the Bible, that it's actually, allegory. It's talking about the human being and the body, right? So do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, that's Irish Druidic tarot, and that goes back very far ages. But yeah, that's just a whole nother show, and I've got a lot of talk. You can't just kind of go into that. But yeah, basically, I just think that's too deep for right now.
That's okay.
It's yes. To put it like this, and I don't like to piss off religious people and stuff, but there's a very big secret being hidden by the Catholic and Protestant Church too, and all of them, about what the Bible's really is, what it's talking about, where it took place, history. And so, anyone who knew what it was really talking about and the esoteric coding behind it, they were either killed in the Inquisitions and tortured, or they were burned in what we call the witch hunts. Remember the witch hunts and witch trials? And all the Druids were murdered. Anyone who could still speak the ancient Irish Gaeilge, not Gaelic or Irish, but Old Gaeilge, were murdered. Any of the Scots who tried to still wear the old Tartars and Tartarian speak even that kind of Celtic, were murdered, because they have the language that can decode where all this took place and what it's really talking about. So that's really, and the Jesuits, they sent out all these missionaries, right, all around the world, these Jesuit priests. They weren't converting people. They had army people with them. Conversion is what they did to the Native Americans. They killed them. You believe in this or we kill you. And they really wanted to kill the Native Americans, because the Irish priests of Jesu Christ, or the Yudes, the Druids, they had been to America long before Cristobal Colonia and all them. So these Native Americans already had Christianity. They already had the Christian cross. They already had all the sun worship. They know what's in the Old Testament. They already spoke Hebrew. The Florida Seminoles spoke Hebrew when they found them. They're like, how the fuck do these Indians speak Hebrew? And they were wearing little Jewlocks on them. They're like, what? And it's because it was brought to them. It was brought to them way before our history books say we even got there. If that even happened, even our story about the Pilgrims and all that, I'm not totally convinced that happened either. There's too much. I've got friends who are Native American or black Moors. And they're like, dude, we were already there. We were black already in the United States. We weren't all brought over on slave ships and stuff. This shit goes so deep, So again, it's really hard. Where do you find your history? You need to talk to natives, Moors, or alternative people. It's really hard, Beth, to find out what's really going on.
Right. And hasn't that been part of that divide and conquer strategy, that you divorce people from their homelands, from the bones of their ancestors? I've heard people talk about that they have a, a resonance and a transmission going on. And, so we're all displaced. Now we've got mass immigration going on, especially in Canada and the US, maybe other places. Actually, it's replete in Europe as well, right?
Yeah, we have a lot. Denmark didn't actually, but it's a problem in Sweden right now, next door, Norway up north. England is just getting flooded. Yeah, the Kalergi plan is what they call it. It's real. Like, they are flooding us with Northern Africans and Africans. I'm just saying it's not a tiny hat or a J-ish. It's not a J-ish thing.
Right. Right, exactly.
I'm saying it's the Vatican and black nobility. They are trying to cause turmoil and water us down. Now, what I suspect might be happening, and again, now I'm in the realm of this is my opinion. I'm not saying I have any proof of this. I don't think they're being put here to take us over. I think this is problem, reaction, solution, or Hegelian dialectic. They put them here. I think they're even arming some of them. There have been stories in Europe where, because they get free hotels and shit over here. I don't know what they're getting. What happens in Canada? Are they just like free healthcare?
Yeah, I don't exactly know. I know they protested massively against, what was it, that they couldn't vote, or they weren't getting free education, or something kind of like really entitled that even the average Canadian doesn't get. And they were literally raising arms about that. Well, not raising arms, but jumping up and down.
Right.
Yeah, so it's hard to say. I asked somebody in a gas station, did they pay you to come here? Guys, I've been a little bit rude. Like, where are all our people disappearing to? Every time you go out into public, you can barely find our people anymore. Where did they go? And I said, did they pay you to come here? And she right away like, oh, no, I had to pay a lot to come here. And you're seeing a lot of the businesses, especially like trucking companies, get bought up by foreigners, and therefore their employees are only 100%. Like, you do not get a delivery driver that comes from Canada originally. That it's just, you don't get an Uber driver, you don't get a taxi driver. They're literally buying those companies and making sure that our people don't get those jobs. Is what's happening.
It's quite interesting because here in Denmark, they've been doing that forever. Like Pakistanis and Indians and foreigners like that, they would get like the equivalent of like a 50,000 kroner business loan to open up a kiosk or a dry cleaner, or just the kind of shit that none of the Danes want to do. It's not like they're taking over the government. They're just doing low level shit no one wants to do. But yeah, people here were bitching too. How come you get that loan? You're not even from here, and they say, well, it's to give them a head start because you have an advantage from being here. They don't even speak the language, so we're giving them a heads up. But what I think, because there are disturbing stories that I can't confirm, like in France, England, where these hotels, some of the hotel owners claim they have been getting crates sent to the hotel saying not to open, and there's weapons in there, and all these immigrants are there. Is that bullshit? I don't know. Is that propaganda? Let's say it is true. I don't think the plan is that we're being secretly invaded. You know what I mean? Like, the sleeper cells are being brought in, and everyone says they're all men of fighting age and no women and children. Maybe they are actually, but I think if they fight, the idea would be that the governments will have to bring in the UN, the world government, and say, oh, we got a problem now. We have all these foreigners running around with machine guns raping women, and they'll come in and kill them as big brother, as your right problem, reaction, solution to save you. And now that it's such a problem, we need to keep the troops here. So we don't need your government anymore. They want the one world government. Right. You don't need a one world government unless there's a problem in every country that your local government can't solve.
Exactly.
So I see it possibly like that's what's going on. They're flooding us, not because they're going to let them take us over, but because they're going to kill them and then say they're a danger, though. Eurasia has always been at war with, 1984, right? We've always been at war with Eurasia, and you just keep this imaginary war going on so that you need the controllers. And by the way, now we're on the streets. Now we need biometrics, facial recognition, right? we can't have these people running around. So for your own protection, you're all going to have checkpoints and biometrics. This is Nazi shit, pretty much, you know?
Right, exactly. Another either explanation, but it's not mutually exclusive. There is about our dying populations, and that if you hadn't brought all these people in, that, like you said, they want to take the drugstore clerk job and the fast food restaurant job and the what we consider to be low level. Our youth don't really want to work because they're more or less taken care of. They feel hopeless that they could own land or be their own king in their own property, and then so it's possible that our dying population, right? We are not reproducing. When you're producing 2 children, you are a dying population. And so when you bring in the immigrants, then that boosts the economy, right? So some financial guys would say that's the whole reason right there.
Yeah, and I've heard both sides of that argument, and I agree. Yeah, you're right, because but their populations are going down as well. But yeah, exactly. They can't just have it all crash. Like it's clear they're trying to get rid of the middle class and siphon off the wealth. That's Agenda 21, 2030, clearly. Yeah. This is just a cash robbery from the middle class. But yeah, like you're saying, the society can't collapse either, or else they'll get the revolution that they don't want. Like they want to change, but they don't want us to control the revolution. So if it all crashed and we have nothing else to lose, then we would maybe take up arms or whatever and do something. So yeah, I think you're right. A lot of it's just bringing in people to do shit we don't have people to do anymore. And population's another funny one, because I don't trust any population stats. So I'm like, are there less of us? Are there more? I don't know. How would you know? Like, unless you went door to door taking a census, you know what I mean? So like, I really don't know. I've seen 3 or 4 different theories on what's going on. Maybe they're all right, wrong, together. That's one I just don't know. I have my ideas, but I don't know.
And on both sides of the equation, whether we're a dying population or we're an exploding population, they're both meant to create a fear, right? That humanity's going to die one way or the other, right?
Scarcity. I mean, if I had to venture, I'd say we're dwindling because their goal is to kill us all. So since they want 90% of us gone, I would imagine they're doing that. That's what all the wars are about, and the food controls that's coming. And, so, I mean, I would think it would be a miracle if we're growing. Yeah. Because you can't even, like, my mom had, there were 13 of them, brothers and sisters. My dad had 12. My dad's wife had 16. Now, I don't know anyone with even like 3 kids, barely 3 or 4 tops. Do you know any like huge families anymore?
Not commonly. No, barely. I know, maybe I can count on 2 fingers people that have more than, say, 6 or 7 children at the most, and very uncommon. Yeah.
You just can't even afford it anymore. And now the mom and dad both have to work. Yeah. It's not like the 70s where the dad could have like a mediocre mechanic job and still afford a house, 2 cars, and all the kids. Like that's gone.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think the economy is in a way where, it's just population control by just strict financial hardship. Now I heard there's like kids with college degrees. Like in America, they're living like 5 kids not kids, but 5 young adults in a big house or in a building. They can't even afford like a house anymore. I don't think anyone can even afford a house.
I know. Exactly. I actually feel grateful I never was considered qualified by the bank to have a mortgage, because I'm in many ways better off now. But yeah, I know it's just a stupid thing.
Yeah, and then the question, like, it is what it is, but that's my thing. Getting back to the truther movement, like, what are we going to do about it? We can all sit and talk all we want about how shitty things are, but what are we going to fucking do about it? What's the solution? What do we do?
Yeah. What do you think are the salvageable parts of this movement?
For me personally, I think the movement would be a lot stronger if it weren't a movement. if we all split off, we can have groups and little tribes in the movement, you know. I think like if flat earth is your thing, that you all get together, or whichever ones you agree and whichever you don't, go do that. If health is your thing and you want to get rid of these and all that, go do that. If, you know, if history is your thing, like, I think we need to stay out of each other's business and say, what are you going to commit to physically? Law, let's say the law, like we talked about. I think we're all stepping on each other's toes. Like if you're a health person, then stay there and get the fuck stay out of my business with the law. If you're not doing law yourself, right? If you're not going to court yourself and writing off bills, then shut up. Because that's the brave new world. They give you so much chatter that you're just scared and worried that there's too much to digest. And I see a lot like, there's a lot of truthers. All that means now is sitting around watching 30 podcasts a day. Who's got the latest dirt on the latest thing? They're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So what good is being a truther if you're not applying it? You know what I mean? So I think like the thing to do is pick your passion and go out and do something about it. And then try if you can. You need to be informed. I'm not saying everyone should just be ignorant, but you know the game. If you know the end game, you know what they're after. Do you need the daily play by play? You know what I'm saying? Or I don't need it. Oh, did you hear what Trump and Putin did? I'm like, I know what the fucking long game is, so I don't care the details of how it's going down. Get your family in order. Go get your farm. Go get your food collective. Get some money saved up. Get some supplies in case they do go for a war or a food shortage or whatever. Go start talking to your neighbors for once. Stop fighting over the shape of the earth. You know what I mean? Or the vaccines or whatever. You don't want a vaccine, don't take one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
shut up. If someone does, then fuck it. Let them go. To me, that's the solution, is to try to reduce the mind chatter and do something. Like do the best part of magic. You can think about writing your book all you want. Was writing the book. That's the magic, is putting the book out.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why it comes down to the hero's journey. It's why it's been very weaponized against us, always making us believe there's some other hero in the scene, when the true meaning of that myth is you are the hero in your journey, and you're tasked to create. And if you don't create, you're going to die with those regrets on your deathbed. I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but that is the reality that we're dealing with. So what can you create? What can you put out in front of you that is going to benefit more than just you? So it's not just gray magic, it's actually white magic in your language there. Right? How can
we didn't even need to have we didn't need to have this podcast, because you just said the whole point. You have to create Buckminster Fuller. I think we said this last time. You don't fight. You don't put all your energy into fighting the existing system. You put it into creating something that makes it obsolete. Creation. We are creators. That's what this is all about. I'm not saying everyone has to have a podcast, or you don't have to like actually go out and change the world. But you need to create for your family and yourself and your friends and all that. You don't have to be a big hero or famous or anything, but you have to do something. Sitting around watching 30 podcasts a day about how shit the world's going to shit, that is doing something. But what is that doing for you? Nothing. It's not going to feed you if the lights go out. So yeah, if we all started creating what we were passionate about, I totally agree with you. This system just wouldn't work, because no one would want to participate in it anymore, because they'd be like, look how great everything is out here. Look at all these people doing this collective over here. And look at these people. Look at this, how great that is. Who the hell would want to live in a 15-minute smart city with like cameras all over them? If they had an option to go do something cool, nobody would do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that about, find your people. Now, the only problem is, could you get along with your people? Could you get along? This is a big question mark. We haven't really learned to get along. We don't need to get along. We can still go along to get along in our own little lives. And so to me, that's a very big thing worth working on. Backing up again, know thyself, understand your workings, understand when your buttons get pushed, how could you potentially do some inner work instead of fighting it out with your brother? Those kind of things, because otherwise we're not going to survive even those small groups of our kind, which I think it's really meant to be. That's one of the things the Bible said around the Tower of Babel, like go and find your kind.
Yeah, that happened to a lot of people in communes, back in the 60s and 70s. Just because you all like the idea of a commune or communism doesn't mean you're all going to like each other when you get in it. And a lot of that happened. They all live together and like, shit, I don't actually like I'm living with 40 people and 20 of them are assholes. So just because you all like communism doesn't mean you should live together. Totally. That's what I was saying about the truth movement, if we did it or it's organic or not. You can't pile 3 million billion people together and say, just because you all love truth means you all like each other. And if you're infighting all the time, you won't do anything else but infight. So yeah, to me, it's what you're saying. I think we'd be better off getting into tribes again. And it's the same with the lefty woke shit and all that. I'm all into inclusivity and all that stuff, right? It's just a damn fact that you like to hang out with people you have more in common with culturally than others. I'm not saying that as a racist thing. I have black friends, Asian friends, this and that. I have nothing personal against them. We hang out together. But I don't want to live in a village in fucking Oogie Boogie, Africa, because I got nothing in common with everyone in that village. Not that I couldn't have a good time and learn a lot, but I don't want to spend my life like that.
Right.
And I think we all need to quit trying to force each other to, you all need to, take each other's cultures and become one homogenous mess of shit. You're like, no, that's the reason we're all special. Because Asians are totally cool. Like they're totally different than us and cool. Like the Chinese are nothing like Africans or nothing like the Scandinavians. So fuck your diversity as far as I'm concerned. I don't mean exclude each other, but I mean, it's okay to hang out with people that you have a programmed cultural affinity with. You don't need to be miserable forcing yourself to do shit you don't want to do around people you don't want to do it around.
Exactly. Yeah, no one said it to my face, but I'm a big fan of preaching to the choir, right? I'm not here trying to wake up normal people. I'm here with my kind, people that I can relate to, that we share enough in common with our goals and our values that we can have a conversation and we can learn from each other, right? But if there isn't that foundation, then what are you going to get out of it? You're just going to be doing this exercise of inclusion. I think we all know that here. Maybe it goes without saying. But
yeah,
right, yeah.
And you said that to me. I think the first time we talked, you were talking about echo chambers.
Exactly.
And you said to me, Steve, of course you want an echo chamber, because I said I feel like, I'm just saying the same shit to the same, 100,000 whoever follows us. And you said that's what you want. You don't want to. You want your echo chamber. Those who appreciate you. And to me, that when you said that to me, I was like, fucking right. Yeah. What am I doing? Wasting all my time arguing. Just the penny just went like whoop. Right. I thought, okay. Yes. So then I'm like, yeah. If this guy's trolling my page. Fuck free speech. You're gone.
Exactly. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I'm not saying it's a color thing. Like, I don't care if my tribe is black, Chinese, white, Asian, mixed. Like, I'm not saying this is a racial or even a cultural thing. But if we don't have at least like common interests in culturality, then no, I don't want to, be inclusive or whatever the hell you call all that shit. I want to hang out with my tribe.
Exactly. And maybe there's a difference between natural conflict and unnatural conflict, where with your own people, things are going to come up. It's a given. But when it's not your people, then it's just so stacked against you. Your potential of getting along is really reduced. So that's really
and then like that we can't get into this, but This is the whole shit with all the isms: communism, fascism, ism, socialism, capitalism. You know, really what we want is individuality and liberty, self-liberty, self-governance. Because I agree with you, even 10 people you love, look at your families. We all love our families. We grew up with them. You're still fighting all the time like your brothers and sisters. You grew up like in a house fighting the shit out of each other, and you love each other. Like they're the least people you'd ever want to hurt or kill, but you hate the fuck out of them. You're like, you know. So I don't think anybody could be thrown together and just magically get along like Lucky Charms. I don't think it could happen.
No, I don't think so either. Exactly. Well, if you have time, I would love to ask you one last question. And there's lots in the chat that I've been missing, but thanks very much for participating, you guys. And so overall, do you feel optimistic about where we're headed, you know, as a species, maybe as a, you know, like our ability to be more tribal and meet and find our people if we stop using truth and freedom movement? Do you feel optimistic about where it's headed, or something?
You go first. Do you?
Oh boy, I just will admit that it goes like this. That, you know, some days you wake up and we're winning, and that I have winning program, by the way, programming. So I contend with that, and then you see another, you know, bit of evidence, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's hopeless. Where is this headed? So I don't have a strong conclusion, but I do believe in the power of the spirit of a human being and the source we come from. And that does seem to, forgive my use of the word, trump all at the end of the day. That seems to be the most powerful magic of all.
Yeah. Well, if you talk to the old me and people who know the old me, I was a monster pessimist. I'm very optimistic these days. I've actually seen, because I was in this awakening back in 2004, 5, there were no truth movement. There was nobody awake. I was talking like the crazy man on the sign on the street corner with the sign. I was the guy, the world's gonna end. That was me. I see so many people awake, especially since the last 2 or 3 years. Really, I couldn't have dreamed. If you asked me this question 5 years ago, I'd have been like, we're fucked. We're doomed. It has just gone through the roof. Now, where are we going? We're not going anywhere. You're just here in the present. You're not going anywhere. You're always right here. There is no going anywhere. Who is we? Are we going to make it? Some are going to make it. Some aren't going to make it. What I've come to the realization is we're not going anywhere because there's no we. Certain people's destinies are going to be going certain ways and certain won't. But in the end, they're going to go everywhere you're supposed to be. If you've got your mind resonating to shit, you can bet your ass you're going to have a nasty little time coming up. And if you're putting your mind to something that's positive and working and manifesting and trying to meet people, you know, at least with similar direction, I think you're going to have a great old time. So to answer your question, I can't answer the question. Some of us are going to have a great time. Some of us are going to have the exact shit time we seem to want.
That's the most wise of all. And that's exactly what you see, that if you just even look at the last 4 years, never mind way back to 2004 where you were at, but that people have fashioned their world. They have been the magicians. They have created in a certain way. Some people have lost everything. Some other people have lost in some ways and built and created and gained in other ways. And so everyone is sitting here on the power of the free will of their choice, what to do day after day after day with what they've been given, what we've been dealt, you know, the positive, the negative, with resources you have, resources that you could get. And then that everybody's going to have a different experience. I often talk about, is it Joshua in the Bible? I'm sure that has a different meaning, but you know, when Babylon had captured them and they were all slaves in a very bad way, but Joshua was the one, if I'm getting the name right, that you know, got the favor of the king and lived a very good life. So that's
the favor. That's your hero's journey. That's the favor of the king within, metaphorically. If you stay the path, the correct path, you will get the favor of the creation. It's going to happen. Yeah. That's the good thing that I do see is that, to get back to whoever was talking about the occult before, people are starting to realize that what we call the occult is just really another name for spirituality starting to take hold, you wanting higher things for other people and not just yourself, and not all your lower pleasures only, but wanting greater things for everything around you, not just you, but everything. And more people are starting to get into what you would call hidden or occulted knowledge. It's coming to the forefront. You're writing books about it. Like what your book is just, that would have been called Mystery School Occultism 200 years ago. There's nothing mysterious about it. So I do see a lot of people figuring out as shit's getting more blatantly crazy, like if it's more obviously crazy around, like, I don't know if you see it, but I can't tell some days if the news is like a joke, if I'm reading The Onion, or if it's like really, you're like, is that a real news article or is that like is it a spoof? So I think as shit's getting more crazy for everyone, there's a lot of people who are realizing they're going to need to start turning to the spiritual, I don't want to call it only spiritual, but a blending of the spiritual path that we never got taught or they never considered. Like that there is more to life than waking up, brushing your teeth, getting in your car, going to work, taking a shit, having dinner, watching Netflix, and doing, rinse and repeat. Those kind of lifestyles aren't going to be making people happy. And I see a lot more people seeking, there's something more, right? I see a lot more people who are realizing there's something more to this than I used to accept. I used to just accept this is life. This is how it is. They don't know what that something more is. And I think it's different for everyone, but I see a lot more people venturing out to asking that question. There's something more. What's going on? And they want to know. So yeah, I'm really optimistic. I used to, I never had talks like this 20 years ago. Even in bars where I sing in bars, like 20 years ago, it would be dudes talking about Magnum PI and look at that chick's ass. And this is the dumbest shit you ever heard. Now there's people in like bars having conversations like this outside, having a cigarette. You're like, what? And I never saw that, before 2004. So I'm optimistic.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. That's really great, Steve. Yeah. You are a wonderful human being. I totally love connecting with you. I'm glad we're going to see each other in person. If I can make my flights work to Acapulco, that would be awesome.
What are you talking about? Are you doing Hero's Journey again, or what?
Yeah, it's. I'm going to focus in on an alchemical tool called Marrying the Opposites and teach people how to resolve inner conflict. Because we always have these, like, speaking of the occulted knowledge that's out there, this is all occulted. Most people, the inner world is hidden to them. And we are the ones that fight each other. So this is where the real division happens, in our own opposing so-called parts. And so if you can learn that there's no actual opposition except that you are feeding, then you have a lot more of the kingdom at hand, and you can see through, because those polarizations, they have a lot of power in them, unless you don't harvest it, unless you don't actually receive it by marrying those opposites. So that's my talk in a nutshell there.
I mean, that's kind of cool, Beth, because like, yeah, I love you too. I can't wait to see you again. Like, it's going to be great. Even with Acapulco, that was my first one. And then I was at Liverpoco too. I was emceeing, talking. What I was expecting it to be a lot more speeches about like, crypto and survival off grid, practical, like just, physical shit, what to do. And government. I was surprised how much of it was like occulted stuff, like, spiritual woo-woo, whatever you want to call it. But I don't like to call it woo-woo, because to me, it's the real thing. That's the real shit.
Yeah.
Fuck the law. Once you understand who you are, then the law comes easily. You have to know who you are before you even deal with law. If you're still a child inside, you have no business fucking with a court. If that makes sense. So, but anyway, like I was saying, and the more popular speeches and things that were resonating at the last two were these kind of stuff, actually, not the crypto and Lieberland or so to me, I was like, wow, these people are looking for this other thing that's not the physical part. They're looking for this other layer. So to me, I was really optimistic, like, okay, like something's going on. To me, it's like the late 60s, and they had that little micro awakening or whatever, even though it was probably CIA controlled. But to me, I think there's something going on now that in the history books in the future is going to make that 1966 peace, love, and shit. It's going to look like child play compared to what I think is going on right now. But I just don't think we see it because we're in it. Just like the people in 65, they didn't realize, I don't think they were part of anything special until later, they're like, holy shit. They were just like going along with it, like, hey man, but I could see that in 20 years, 30 years, they'll be writing about right now as if this was the shit, like the Roaring 20s. You know what I mean? Do you see that? Or
I can see through your eyes. I can see that through your eyes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, it's the quality of conversations, partly also because I have surrounded myself with like-minded people, then we can stay in much more meaningful conversations, according to me anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, I think people are becoming more and more capable. I saw an aunt post something that was definitely, a decade ago, absolutely not. She wouldn't have been pointing out. It was, just the smallest little flake of pulling back a curtain on something. And I'm like, oh, fancy. That's new. So yeah. We evolve together. That is happening, that we're bouncing off each other. You can't do the change work for other people, but you can certainly help lay a terrain that would be fertile for new knowledge.
Yeah, and I will say too, because like when you realize that mind is manifesting into this and that you are a magician, you better be optimistic. Because if we're all pessimistic and think the place is going to shit, I can fucking guarantee you it's going to go to shit. Like, so if we even want a snowball's chance in hell, we all need to be optimistic and positive. Like, you have no business thinking we're all going to die and be in a slave system or all that. We're not going to win that way. So am I saying that that's good? Am I saying that's not going to happen? No, I'm saying it's up to us whether that happens or not. So why not be optimistic? You want to eat a shit sandwich, or what do you want to eat? Exactly. Why eat a shit sandwich if you don't have to?
That's it. That's a whole new level of accountability to your creative power. That if you're not optimistic, then you're contributing to what you don't want and what everybody else doesn't want either. So
yeah, and that'll manifest for sure. I do believe, I don't know what you believe, I do believe that there is an over consciousness that does manifest together. I know that you can liberate yourself from that as an individual. But I do believe there is a group that makes shit happen, and that's why they mind control us. That is what they do. They control our information so that we act in the way they want it to go. So that's why I think we need to control our own information, and that's why I think this stuff's important. Like, even if we just motivate 3 people with this talk alone, that's perfect.
Exactly. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So if there's anyone here that isn't already subbed, I shared the link in the chat. I'll just share it again since I lost it there. To any other things that you want to share with people, that they can look you up, they can buy you a coffee or a beer, or how do
I love beer, but I get my own at work. But no, if you want to see what I'm doing, I'm Spacebusters at Hotmail. Sorry, that's our what do you call it? Our email, spacebusters@hotmail.com if you want to write. YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey, there's another Spacebusters. We're the one with like a red astronaut logo with the red Ghostbuster with an astronaut. Yeah, I think we're actually on Rumble too, and then we're on Vigilante TV. So my work's out there. We have a Facebook page, but nobody looks at it. So, but yeah, not really. Like, people, you've probably seen me or know me or run across me, but I will have my films coming out. I do a lot of these kind of talks lately. I'm kind of getting into this. I have been interviewing people too, like you're doing. I don't have a show like you, but like I've been finding people that I like and who I think that's the other thing I think we need to do too is I said this to Erasmus and Joel. We all need to start going on each other's shows and then bringing our people to each other. Do you know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
Because it's like let's say connecting our echo chambers so we make a bigger one, right? We don't all have to agree, but I think because we are in echo chambers where you want to be, but I think that our audiences could be bigger if your people found out about my people and got together and vice versa. So I've been doing a lot of that, trying to kind of network and connect with people that I know and see if we can get all our audiences together.
Beautiful. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining today, Steve. It's been a really enjoyable conversation. Thank you, everyone in the chat who's come, and apologize for any comments that got missed, but looks like a nice time was had by all.
Does anyone have any questions in the chat? I don't mind answering a few.
Yeah. I've got maybe another 10 minutes or so if anyone wants to put a question
to you. I can answer if I can.
Yeah. Go ahead and drop it in there. I'm going to look back and see.
Yeah.
Lots of appreciation, finding our tribes before we offer real solutions.
Yeah.
This is an interesting topic just because of the Jays, right? So we've been hearing a lot of the Jays stuff go off on the channel. I don't see any questions.
Okay.
Just appreciation. Yeah.
And I'm not saying the Jews aren't strike that. I love the Jews. I'm not saying the tiny hat people aren't doing horrible things or aren't in position. Like, I'm not saying that they're all innocent and not doing anything nasty, especially the ones who are being put into those positions of power by the Jesuits and the black nobility. They're clearly picking, like you always do. If you want someone to do a scumbag job for you, you pick a scumbag. You and I aren't going to be running the Department of Treasury or anything like that. So this is where people are getting me wrong. They're like, you're saying that they're all innocent and they didn't do anything. I'm like, no. I'm saying when a father abuses a child and the child grows up to be an abuser, I'm not saying that child is what do you call it? Justified in being an abuser. That's wrong. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, forgive them, Father. They know not what they do. These are people who have been abused. They think that they are entitled. They think that they had this thing happen to them in the Second World War, right? And there's a constant mind control on them. So I'm not saying they shouldn't be held accountable. I'm not saying they're not in the wrong. I am against them. I'm against not all of them. Again, I'm against the ones doing what they're doing and supporting that in Palestine. So I just want that clear as shit on the record. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm not sticking up for them, but I am sticking up for the ones who are against it and aren't doing it. I know a lot of Jewish people who aren't doing any of the shit. Like they don't like it either. So that's the only thing I get attacked by a lot of people. They're trying to say I'm sticking up for the Jays. I'm not. I'm disgusted in what they're doing in Palestine. That's disgusting. So I'm not. Yeah. But I'm trying to tell people my problem with the truth movement is they want to get rid of all the Jays and then all the world's going to be smiley and roses and it's going to smell like sunshine. And I'm like, no. You can get rid of all the Jays and it's still going to be shit because they're not running the show. We got to deal with the real people.
There you go.
Thank you, Mankinder. Thank you. If you go on Spacebusters channel, actually, I was just telling Beth, I did a song with Alex Michael, Conspiracy Music Guru. We did one back in April or something like that, called You'll Wake Up Someday. And I'm going there in Spain in December for 10 days. We're going to do 2 new original songs. So you might want to go check that out. That was really good. Yeah. Check it out.
Yeah, I just saw your Facebook. I was going to grab the link to that song, which is awesome, really, because I noticed that you posted that. Yeah. So here it is on YouTube.
It's on his YouTube and mine, and I think it's on all our BitChute and Odyssey and stuff too. But Yeah, you can drop in the link if people want to listen. So I think we're gonna try to do 2. We have one that's really good and one more maybe. We have one where we're fighting over songs. You know, we've been sending a few back and forth at each other, like nah.
Process of elimination.
Well, we're like 2 alpha fucking musician males. Like, it's really hard when 2 alphas try to work together.
It really is. It really is. And so shout out to my son also, who did the trailer, and he's
that was great. Great tune, man. Great guitar work, and it was great.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, he's done really great work with no nothing from me. That's been all him. He taught me early on that he wasn't going to do anything that I suggested he do. So I stopped suggesting, and he just naturally grows into some fantastic skills. I'm very pleased with them. And Janice, maybe for another time we could do a show on the Bible, since that is such a big subject, and it's something that it's very easy to step on toes, and there's just so many factions in that world by design, I think. So it's just full of division. But I know Steve has a good take on the esoteric side of that.
If you go on our Spacebusters channel, you can look at my ones with Brandon Thomas, a couple I've done with Alpha Vedic. I've got probably 4 or 5 pretty long shows on the Bible, or not just on the Bible, but incorporating, that part of it. I am making a film about all that stuff, but it's such a deep topic, and it's so divisive too. That's the problem. Is I'm trying to tell the truth without being divisive or divisive about it, because religion is the one thing, like, it's just, it's the deepest program we have.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. When I started the House of Free Will, I was down a Christian rabbit hole, and oh boy, it was off to a rocky start, because we got people from every possible way. And then, the loudest person that would just like megaphone his messages out, then everybody thinks that the whole thing's about that. And I'm trying not to shut him down, because I'm trying to learn, and we lost a lot of good people off the top, but we're not there anymore. Just so you guys know, we have regular fellowship. That's actually going to be what's coming up right next. And so if anybody's interested to be part of a social experiment in the private, that we're relating, we're getting to know each other, we're learning to get along, we're creating. I think we're about to be having a movie event on Lord of the Rings, which is a very epic. I've never seen it, and I've been doing some work with Josh Del Sol recently. We're putting on an event on the same theme as what I'm doing at Acapulco, so that'll be coming up. And he's challenged me to watch Lord of the Rings and find all the archetypes in there that are exploding off in his head now. So,
oh, right, yeah, you'll like that. Do yourself a favor, just go into Google and type Tolkien Lord of the Rings 19, just the number 19.
19, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Do that when you have a free chance, and then just watch your jaw drop.
Okay, there you go.
That's not who you think he is, and that series is not what people think it is. But
I didn't think so.
It's a very occulted book of work by some. It's not just him; it's a group of people who worked on that. It's you'll see.
Well, maybe that could be a future topic if you had the bandwidth in the future to come back on. If you'd like.
Yeah, definitely in the new year. Like right now, this is the last podcast I took even for this year, because I've got one tomorrow. Actually, that's not true, but it's the second to last one I took. Just because I've got a lot of shit to do. I'm backed up and stuff. So, but yeah, in the new year, I'm definitely down to come back on and talk again. I love this. These are great.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, maybe in time to shout out about Acapulco. Okay, thank you so much for making the time, Steve. Lots of love to you.
Thank you. I love that. Yeah.
Blessings to everyone as well.